This is Jake Ciely, and I'm the blown ACL that ruins your football season.
Good news, everyone! Let's get dangerous.
This is so cool!
I know!
It feels so right!
It's Jake Ciely.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Nice try, Moonman! Pretending not to know! Earth's greatest mastermind!
You just made the list!
I thought you said that was a myth.
Just because it's a myth doesn't mean it's not true.
If you all blindly follow my plan, we may have a chance.
Sure, we talk about it all the time.
Really?
No, burn.
Game on, you Ducks. It is week 10. We're in the double digits already. Holy hell. Let's jump right into it because we went a little long with today's guests and guest singular. I had some fun with him as always, but good mind, good young mind, as you'll find out over at Fantasy Points. But some of the bigger topics I want to make sure I hit on before we get to him and get out of here with the buys and sells today. As always, Arizona running backs, DeMercado, I don't know if you saw the ranks. I'll take a chance on him. A little bit over Bam Knight, given the usage and the upside that we've seen. We kind of fumbled away the opportunity, but they look to be going back to him. That's assuming there is no Trey Benson. If Trey Benson is back, I'm going right back to Trey Benson, even against Seattle, and that's part of the reason I lean into DeMercado is because of the Seattle matchup and how efficient they've been on offense. But even with Jacoby Brissett, we're going to talk the wide receiver and tight end situation, but DeMercado with Brissett, I think, will be inside the RB2-3 conversation. Bam Knight as a pure touchdown-based RB3, and again, that's if no Benson. With the Giants situation, if Tracy is out there, he was already 50-50. Unfortunately, Brian Dabled us. And yeah, that's just what happens. As frustrating as it might be, good matchup with the Bears, but Singletary touchdown. But it's basically a closer knit backfield of DeMercado and Bam Knight for Singletary and Tyrone Tracy, which you can argue Tracy has the ceiling because of the pass catching upside, but if Dable doesn't trust him and Singletary's going to get the goal line work, there's a chance Dart takes him all himself anyway, but against the Bears, I'll give Singletary the barely the lead. Man, I'm struggling. I'm pain meds. I'm not going to lie. I got a neck injury. I'm going for an MRI on Monday. So please give a little bit of a pass for this week's podcast so far. I can hear it in my own voice that it's going a little haywire. But lastly, I just want to get to the guest at this point. Lastly, the Patriots wide receivers. I saw people asking the waiver column. I covered it. If Kayshon Boutte is out, I'm really not trying to chase anybody as a start this week. I will stash DeMario Douglas. I will stash Kyle Williams. Some big play upside in that rookie. But I don't know what the Patriots are going to do. I don't think anybody knows what the Patriots are going to do if there is no Boutte, because they could push Diggs back outside and have Douglas step in as the number 2 back into the full-time slot role and be volume reliant. That would be interesting against the Bucs. But if they don't and they keep Diggs there and then Douglas is only on the field 50% of the time and Kyle Williams and Mac Hollins are outside, you see where I'm going with this? Like, they're all Hail Mary plays. They're all upside plays if you need some super ceiling with plenty of risk, but the risk is a 0 for usage. So I would say that's where I'm going. Maybe we get an answer after this, but it sounds like Boutte should have missed more than a game anyway. So that's why I'm not really chasing the Patriots too much. Okay, and today's guest, you've probably following, if not, rectify that at Ryan Heath, Ryan Heath at Fantasy Points. If you saw a preseason show we did together, if you've seen him over, look, I tweeted this out, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, Ryan, and I said that one of the few things I do after I scan all of my notes is I look for your notes thread as you recap everything from Sunday, because every once in a while you hit something I missed, and I'm like, ooh, good, I need to go back and watch a couple plays. But not only that, Ryan, there's a testament to you there, but to everybody what they need to go find and have what you're doing over at the Fantasy Points world, I should say.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the compliment there. Yeah, I every week I do a giant usage thread on Twitter, drop it Sunday night. Yeah, big undertaking to do right after all the games are ending. But yeah, that's super awesome. People should check that out. But yeah, at Fantasy Points, Scott Barrett and I tag team an article called The Everything Report. Every single week it drops Tuesday afternoons. It's called The Everything Report for a reason. We try to go over every single general relevant usage trend, anything that's changing in the NFL with any fantasy relevant player. We do a pretty good job. It's aspirational in terms of hitting everything, but I think we usually do or get very close. And then also every Friday morning, I have an article that comes out called Advanced Matchups, where I'm digging into some of the schematic coverage data that we have available over in the Fantasy Points data suite, trying to look for ways to use it for the upcoming DFS slate betting, or some people, even if you're especially sicko about matchups, to use it for your weekly fantasy lineups. So yeah, that's all of my stuff, and that's all over at fantasypoints.com.
Yeah, people have seen I reference you guys fantasy points for some of the package, the metrics and stuff like that when I talk about matchups. So always good stuff. Make sure, like I said, you're checking it out. It is pretty much almost the everything. So double down on that. But speaking of changing things and matchups and all these types of things, so the everything, it was actually interesting timing. I wasn't even thinking about it when I scheduled you for this week with the trade situation, which covers everything that we're going to talk about. The first one off the top, Rashid Shaheed to the Seahawks. We have to talk more so the Seahawks fallout than the Saints fallout, because there's not much left with the Saints, and I don't think anybody's like, I really want to go. I mean, we could talk Devon Veely. I think that's a deep flyer, but I think this is more about the Seahawks because we just got the Torrey Horton game, and we're just thinking, oh my gosh, Torrey Horton might be coming for the number 2 spot. Even if Kupp is healthy, maybe he gets kicked to number 3, and then they trade for Shaheed. So, Ryan, what do you make of this situation? Not necessarily only for Week 10, because, of course, we're going to have the question of how much Shaheed's incorporated in his first game, but it should probably be a lot given his familiarity. But going forward, what do you expect with the Shaheed situation?
Yeah, man. First, I want to say I was so excited to write the Torrey Horton blurb in the Everything Report before this trade dropped yesterday. But yeah, I also just love the fit with Shaheed here. Obviously, we have seen him succeed in this Clint Kubiak offense before. Over 5 games with Derek Carr last year, Shaheed was actually averaging a 27% target share, which was much higher than Chris Olave, nearly 70 receiving yards per game, and nearly 15 fantasy points per game. Again, in 5 games with Derek Carr under Clint Kubiak last year. So we've seen it work with Shaheed in this scheme before. Obviously, now you have Jackson Smith-Njigba here, who is kind of succeeding in a lot of the same ways. We're seeing Sam Darnold succeed in a lot of the same ways that Carr and Shaheed were last year. A lot of that is the deep play action stuff. Sam Darnold is leading the NFL in passing yards per game on deep play action. Shaheed was top five in fantasy points per game on those with Carr last year. So I do actually think that Shaheed could be the guy occasionally that is catching these deep bombs that we're seeing with JSN, where he's being absurdly efficient. It's making him average like over 4.5 yards per out run. So I actually do think a little of that could transfer to Shaheed. We could end up in a place where JSN is more of like a mid-range wide receiver one. Shaheed maybe has enough spike weeks to kind of approach the top 25, top 24 fantasy wide receivers. But there is a wide range of outcomes here. It could also just be Shaheed like in kind of the clear out role as a much upgraded version of Torrey Horton doing all of that. So I think it's amazing real life for the Seahawks offense. Very wide range of outcomes for Shaheed specifically in fantasy. But yeah, I'm excited to see what it is. That's all I've really got on it, though.
For the Saints side, actually, you know what? I'm going to kind of combo this one for you. So because now of this situation, I'm assuming if he wasn't already, Kupp is droppable in your mind in most leagues, unless 14, 16 team, maybe you have to. But also, to go to the Saints, is there any maybe sliver of backdoor hope for Kamara? Or is like, because 10 teams, you can argue that Kamara is droppable.
Yeah, I agreed that Kupp is droppable. I do expect Shaheed to just play over him in 2 receiver sets. That's at least got to be their hope. And yeah, the Seahawks run a lot of heavy personnel, not really much room for 3 receivers unless they radically shift their offense. So yeah, agreed on that. Yeah, with Kamara, it's like I don't have that much hope. Like, I wouldn't call him droppable, but just a 12% target share in week 9 in his first full game with Tyler Shuck. He's been below 13% in over half his games after he had I believe the highest target share among all running backs last year, just at like 12.4 expected fantasy points per game over the season. I do think like just the law of targets, like Shaheed going away, there should be some more in the pie for Kamara, but I still do not have much hope for this offense as long as Shuck is under center. If we got Spencer Rattler back at the end of the season, I think things could maybe get a little more interesting. But yeah, like Kamara is at best like a fringe top 30 running back right now. Whatever that's whatever that's worth to you in your league. Yeah, I know, man. Yeah, I would love Spencer Rattler back. I feel very convicted he's one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. This guy should be starting somewhere.
He might be next year at this rate, honestly. But all right, more trades. And this is obviously going to be what a lot of people are dealing with this week. Jakobi Meyers to the Jaguars. So as of talking and recording this, Ryan and I are doing this midday on Wednesday. So we don't have the Brian Thomas word, but we're kind of expecting that Brian Thomas is going to miss at least one, if not a couple games. You don't also make this trade if you're like, hey, everything's fine between him and Travis Hunter. But of course, we have the excitement similar to Torrey Horton. It was like, hey, everybody go get Parker Washington on waivers. It was a great game. If you happen to spot start him last week, great, yay. And then they trade for Jakobi Meyers. So is this, I don't think it's as bad as the Torrey Horton situation, but I don't know. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to push like where I'm going to go with this. I'm just going to ask you, what do you make of Parker Washington after the Jakobi Meyers trade, and how would you put their values out there? Because I don't want to like kind of put words in your mouth. I'll just let you explain.
Yeah, no, we can start with Washington for sure. So what's really important here is who is going to play in the slot the most. So Myers is a player that can play both in the slot and outside, and we have seen Washington have his most success when he's been in the slot this season. It sounds like from kind of the early tidbits and quotes we're getting that Myers is at least going to start on the outside, that it is just going to be easier for him to pick up that part of the offense to begin with, is what Liam Cohen seems to believe. So I think for at least a couple weeks, you can continue to get like wide receiver 3 spot start kind of production out of Parker Washington. So I think you're good in the short term. Long term, maybe Myers moves into the slot more. But yeah, the reason that's like such a big thing is because the Liam Cohen slot role is awesome. Like he made Wan'Dale Robinson into a thing at Kentucky. Like he got Chris Godwin to almost 15 fantasy points per game just from the slot alone last year. Like that's like the really valuable stuff in his offense. So yeah, Washington, I think you can start him for at least a couple weeks. Myers, I think he just is a low-end wide receiver too, like he's been for a lot of his career. He hasn't really played that well this year, commanded that much volume, done all that much, but he's been kind of publicly wanting to be traded, much like Devontae Adams last year, kind of quiet quitting on the team. Myers like follows in his footsteps here. But before his trade request over his previous 11 games, Myers was at 9.8 targets per game and nearly 80 receiving yards per game. So this is a guy that can command volume. This Jaguars offense, I mean, despite all the drops from their receivers, they are top 4 in catchable targets and catchable air yards per game this year. That's so crazy. It's a way better offensive environment for fantasy than people give it credit for. So I do think Myers is going to be fantasy relevant, should finish as a top 24 receiver the rest of the way.
So let me kind of throw a question that some people might not think about with this situation, but because Jakobi Meyers is gone and we just saw Brock Bowers looking 100%, we have trade deadlines. We had the NFL trade deadline. We have fantasy trade deadlines coming up. Is Brock Bowers a potential buy high coming off that game, and the fact that like you might just be willing to pay not necessarily first round cost, if with everything being equitable, but maybe that second round cost, and people might see that as like, hey, you know what? Well, if you're going to pay that for me, I'll get off of it because of the risk, where it might actually be the best move to make.
Oh my God, I would love to rebuy Brock Bowers at like round 2 costs right now. I'll own up to it. I was an anti-Bowers in round 2 guy in the preseason, but I have seen more than enough now to where I'm like, this is legit. So I'll just read off some stats here. So like the one complaint or worry you could have had about Bowers after like week 1 before all the injury stuff was, well, he's not actually running that many routes. Like he's kind of weirdly rotating in line with Michael Mayer, not always on the field. That wasn't the case last week. He ran a season high 88% of his routes from the slot or out wide. He'd been at least 46% in line during every other game. So what that means is basically Brock Bowers is playing wide receiver, which is exactly what he should have been doing this entire time. It took them until he got fully healthy and half the season to figure this out, but I'm glad they have. Them trading Meyers confirms to me that that's just what they're going to be doing going forward. So I really do think you can evaluate him as a wide receiver with tight end eligibility, and he's pretty amazing by any of those metrics when you think about him that way. He's has the 6th highest receiving yards market share, the 2nd best first downs per route run among all receivers this year if you just count his 2 healthy games, more yards per route run than everyone aside from JSN in his 2 healthy games. And the Raiders in those games, weeks 1 and week 9, have been, I believe, 3rd and 7th in total EPA per play in those 2 weeks, where they've been dead last whenever they've played without a healthy Bowers. So I do think this offense could be a lot better going forward than people have become accustomed to. And yeah, Bowers just like creates his own environment. It's really like what if Drake London or Amon-Ra St. Brown had tight end eligibility. So yeah, buy high on Brock Bowers. He just is a top 5 wide receiver to me for the rest of the year.
Oh, I mean, there you go. So for your buys and sells, they buy high, and it makes it a lot of sense. All right, so let's talk about a situation where I talked buys and sells on this podcast for my solo part, and one of my buys is DeAndre Swift, because nobody wanted him to start the year, nobody wanted him when he was performing, and now nobody wants him because of what just happened with Kyle Monangai. So I want to get your thoughts on more so the situation, because Monangai just had a huge game. Whether or not Swift plays this week is obviously going to determine a lot with rankings and everything like that. But more so going forward after this, are we looking at the lesser, in your mind, because I've already said my piece in the fact that I think we're looking at lesser versions, because they are lesser versions, but lesser versions of the Ben Johnson running back situation with the Lions, where, hey, they can both be good. Just because Monangai was great doesn't mean it's the end of DeAndre Swift. But also, we had the breakout game from Colston Loveland. Obviously, Cole Kmet got hurt, but we also got a big fat goose egg from Rome Odunze. So what are you making of the Bears offense for week 10 and going forward?
Yeah, so I'll start with the running backs. So DeAndre Swift, before the Monangai takeover, or his injury plus Monangai doing this, to me had actually been a sell. And the reason for that is we have seen the Bears over their past several games be very run heavy, but they'd been able to be because largely they had been winning games. They had been playing generally weaker offenses, weaker teams, and they could get away with that. And that's probably what they want to be. At least they're going to try to run the ball every game going forward. But the upcoming...
Let me make you pause real quick. Sell for what? Because I think we actually agree, even though I was saying that now he's a buy, I think we probably still agree on what the sell. So make that clear for everybody what you were saying, like sell-wise.
Yeah, sorry. So back then when he was scoring as like a low-end RB1, and I was like, if you can get like mid-range RB2-ish value for him, I was just doing that. Yeah. That was my initial stance. Now I think if he's just going to be valued as like a bench piece or is like not a top 24 running back, then I think it starts to get interesting. Yeah, because this is an effective run game. We've seen this with Ben Johnson before. And yeah, Swift could totally come back and just go back to like the 65-35 split he was in with Monangai in the few games after the bye, where he was being very efficient, and he could be productive on that. But yeah, my one word of caution is just the Bears schedule. Like they have games against the Eagles, Packers twice, 49ers. Like they're only favored in 2 more games for the rest of the season after this week. And we've seen Monangai get some of the receiving work, or at least some of the passing down work. Neither back has been all that involved as a receiver. So just the game script angle makes me a little bit nervous about the Bears backfield in general going forward compared to what we've seen this last month or so. But yeah, I mean, I do think Monangai could force like a 50-50 committee here, especially if Swift misses this week. They get the Giants' fourth most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed to opposing running backs. He's probably going to be very productive again for a second week in a row. And I mean, we've seen like with these coaches, like with Dave Canales, for example, us fantasy dorks are like, yeah, who cares that like Rico Dowdle went for 300 yards? Like it was the Dolphins and the Cowboys. Like these are horrible defenses. But I don't think real life NFL coaches think in those terms as much, where it's like they're not going to diminish the accomplishments of their players because they played against a bottom three defense and they did it. So yeah, so to me, I think Swift is fine if he's very cheap, but I wouldn't be paying like actual top 24 running back prices for him right now.
But would you do that? Would you be buying Odunze cheap because people are full on panic mode?
I would be, yeah. So Odunze, largely his target share has remained at like a top 18 wide receiver level. That's where his usage has been. The Bears have been less pass heavy since the bye, and again, partially because that's worked for them and partially because they haven't needed to throw. But everything I just said about their schedule to me says, yeah, they might need to throw the ball more down the stretch. This is like a positive for Loveland as well. I do think Loveland also probably retains his every down role. He had already out of the bye been just running more routes on third downs than Cole Kmet. There was a big flip there. So yeah, I would be generally positive on both Odunze and Loveland. I think Loveland is probably in like the tight end streaming kind of tier, like a fringe top 14-ish guy for the rest of the season. And Odunze, I would look at as kind of like a top half wide receiver too. Will probably have big games if the Bears need to throw, but yeah, there will certainly be games like this where his father is complaining on Twitter after.
All right. Well, speaking of father, like making me feel old, I'm going to say, like, so the fun question I had for you before we get back to the real questions, and of course, timing wise. So we had really good timing with the trade deadline. And then my fun ranks over on the site this week was really poor timing because it's the top 25 PlayStation 2 games. And then I'm like, oh, I got to ask Ryan because I always ask my guest, what would, my rankings, what would be your number one? Well, also, like, you're barely born when this came out. So you made me feel old as dirt. But, like, in any case, because I'm not even going to say, you tell the people what you said to me when you said that you actually played it because, and then tell me what your favorite game was.
Yeah, so when you sent me this question, I Googled it. I found out that the PlayStation 2 was released in America about a year after I was born. But I do have memories of playing it as a child, and that's because my father actually had one. Yeah, I was allowed to play it occasionally as a small child. So yeah, sorry to anybody that feels old because of that. I feel old sometimes these days too, but I'm sure that doesn't make anyone feel better.
All right, so what was your favorite game playing your father's PS2?
The one I remember most playing a ton was MLB 2007, the show. I would just like it, and this is, I guess, is very indicative of what I do now and how I think about sports now. Is like in fantasy football and everything is I would not really do anything other than play like whatever the franchise mode was, where you're just like signing guys. I would like sim through entire stretches of games. I remember you could like buy upgraded like travel accommodations for your team. Like you could make them be on like the coach bus and travel all over the country like that, or you could get them private jets. Like there was all this like franchise mode customization that I remember just loving as a kid in MLB 07, the show.
Well, so you're actually like me in that one aspect. Is I always spent like the college football one, I wouldn't play any of the games. I would spend all the time recruiting. The baseball one was the same thing. I was actually just texting today with somebody over the Athletic, and I was like, I was the idiot in high school that despite playing baseball, I wanted to grow up and be the GM to make all the decisions. I didn't want to actually be a professional baseball player. I wanted to be the GM. But anyway, speaking of controlling these decisions, how about that for a transition I wasn't expecting? Jacoby Brissett is at quarterback. It went from hey, Kyler Murray's not 100% to a soft benching to a full out benching. Is that even if healthy, Kyler Murray would not be starting. They are turning to Jacoby Brissett. I tweeted this out yesterday. this isn't the big win for Marvin Harrison everybody thinks it is. If you actually look, and you go back, if people want to find my tweet, the numbers between Kyler Murray and Jacoby Brissett on fantasy points per target, yards per route run, catchable balls, target percent, like everything with Marvin Harrison is almost identical for Kyler Murray and Jacoby Brissett. The big difference, Ryan, is Trey McBride is a massive upgrade of touchdowns, again, yards per route run, fantasy points per target. So are you with me in the say, like, we can just look at it simple as that and look at all the numbers? Or I got some pushback saying, we both do the same thing. We use metrics, but we also watch the games. We see everything. People are like, I know what you're saying, but I've seen Brissett and Kyler Murray just doesn't look good this year. So is there any pushback where, like, I guess I'm assuming you agree on McBride, but maybe you want to say, hey, I hear what you're saying, Jake, but I think there is a little bit more hope for Marvin Harrison.
I do think there's kind of a vibes angle to this that does matter. That is
That's
maybe
so
a little little underrated in fantasy football is how much the vibes matter for these teams. The Kyler Murray vibes have not been good all year. He hasn't been very good all year. He very much is like, he hasn't really developed or advanced much at all since he was a rookie. The NFL has kind of moved away from the spread era where Kyler could kind of sit in the shotgun and thrive in that way. Like the meta is very different now, where you want guys to be under center running play action. And I think Brissett is just a better fit for this Drew Petzing offense. And that matters a lot to me. Just that the offense is now in a place where things are clicking correctly. Guys just aren't as frustrated with each other. So I do think we could see some improvement to Marvin Harrison's numbers. I don't think he's going to turn into a wide receiver one or anything like that. But yeah, I do think the vibes matter. That is a thing. And yeah, Kyler just would have so many of these plays where he drops back and it doesn't even look like he's looking downfield. Maybe because he can't see over the offensive line anyway. But he just, with any pressure, he would just kind of put his head down and start running around in the pocket. None of that happens with Brissett. Like, he just runs the offense. Harrison looks great winning against the Cowboys defensive backs one-on-one. I don't know that happens every single week, but that it at least was a thing on Monday night. So yeah, I do think it matters, but maybe not in terms of like, oh, he's going to average 2 or 3 more fantasy points per game now.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing there too. All right, one more fun question, and then one more like the big one before we get out of here fantasy. Well, not the big one, but a big one fantasy-wise. But the fun question. This is always the secret one. Nobody gets to know before they come on. But if they listen to the podcast, by now they know it's a pick your poison, Ryan. You have to pick one of these 3. You don't get a choice. Well, you get a choice, but you can't say no, none of the above. So every year from now on, because like I had Florio on last week and he got all technical. He was like, "Well, I've already spent most of my so no, we don't play this. It's already week 10, so it's not a big a deal anymore." So in general, like we're going to say 2026, for your favorite fantasy team, you have to stream tight ends the entire year, but you can never use one a second time. So basically, one and done at tight ends. The entire year, you have to stream tight ends. All right. Okay. Number 2, from week 1, you found the one defense that's going to score 15 plus points every single week, but when it comes to their bye, you have to drop your quarterback. So that's number 2. Okay. And then number 3 is every time you drive your car, your windshield wipers do that skidding, bumping, squeaking, bouncing thing the entire time you're driving, whether it's raining or not.
Oh my God, definitely not that one. That's, yeah. That's easily the worst.
You could have lived through that? Look, I told Nicole that one, and she was like, "Oh my God, I would never drive again."
Yeah, no, that's so horrible. Like, it just, yeah, I don't want to be uncomfortable all the time that I'm driving. I'd rather be uncomfortable with streaming a tight end every single week than doing that.
You would take that one?
No, honestly, like, I would probably take the defense one, because number one, that is like more time removed that I have to spend streaming defenses. I just get like the good outcome every single week. I have to drop my quarterback on their bye for that 1 week to play a different defense. Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah, so you can't. Your quarterback's the person. You got to switch to another quarterback potentially. Or point being, your quarterback's the one that has to go.
Gotcha. No, I mean that's fine. Like,
you can survive that.
Just I can survive that. I've switched from like Justin Fields to Caleb Williams in some leagues this year. Like that's not that out of the ordinary. Yeah, this sounds like I just get the free best defense. So I'll definitely go with that one.
What if I dropped it to 10 points per game? And then make you think twice? Maybe go to the tight ends?
I mean, that's still what, like a top 5 defense or better?
I mean, that is true. Yeah, and you don't have to think about getting a 0. Maybe I made that one too beneficial. That's the problem. I will say the big thing out of this is I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to like do the streaming tight ends the entire year, but I always say this, and I'm just kind of curious as a theory, and then we'll get the final question. What I tell people most of the time, and I think the biggest mistake people make with that, jokes aside, Ryan, is that when people are like, oh, should I drop Mark Andrews to go get Musgrave, or should I pick up Musgrave or Loveland, or should I go swap out Pitts to go get Love? Like, my answer has always been the same. I'm just curious your theory on this, is that once you get past the big 5, I'm just sticking with one person unless they have like 3 bad games in a row, because the chasing the production, you've already missed the good game. And then when they have the bad game where you're like, well, now I got to switch again. And then if they had and you end up missing more good than you end up getting, so you get more bad than good. So I just stick with one person and I ride the wave because it's tight end. You're going to get 50-50 production anyway.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much how I look at it too. Like there are rare exceptions. Like I would have dropped a lot of players for Rondé Gadsden a couple of weeks ago. Like when there's like a clear emergence of like, oh, this guy just has top 6 upside the rest of the season, then yeah, you want to be nimble. But yeah, aside from that, tight end 6 through like 14 is all 25? Pretty much the same. yeah, on it, like couldn't make it even more than that. So yeah, you don't need to be like stressing yourself out switching every single week.
Random Noah Fant game, once every 5 weeks. All right, we'll get you out of here on this. We took up too much of your time already, but similar to the Kamara situation, you've already kind of answered it to a degree, but I wanted to loop him into this. This was a little bit of a tease for later, is that this final question, the running back situation. There's a lot that are disappointing right now, and there's a big 4. One's actually a name that we've known for years, that being Alvin Kamara, but we have Kamani Vidal, who was cool for one game, and then he's been meh. Oh, by the way, that's pretty much what Kamani Vidal did last year. We have Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who has single digits in 4 straight weeks. He's actually just saw our lowest running back touch percentage since way back in week 1, and it was a blowout. But then we have Woody Marks, who can't get past freaking Nick Chubb, and now they're incorporating Britton Brown, and Dare Ngubawale is back again because this is what the Texans do. So I guess my question for these 4, because they're all in droppable scenarios if you're in a shallow 10-team league. But the biggest question I see in waivers and people, Ryan, is there any hope for any of these 4 to be somebody you can use down the stretch as an RB2, or is it basically game over for all 4 of them?
Yeah, so I probably have the most hope for Vidal just because we've seen the Chargers, when they're in like a very positive game script, they are willing to just feed him. He's averaged out to about 14.7 expected fantasy points per game over the last month. That has been very much all over the place. Like, yeah, we've got Jarrett Patterson now becoming involved on the ground. Like, it can definitely go up and down from week to week, but we definitely aren't seeing Omarion Hampton until at least week 13 after the Chargers bye. So we have a couple more weeks of this where Vidal is going to project as like a top 24 running back. So he's the one I have the most hope for. Again, could be up and down. Woody Marks, the moment that Britton Brown starts getting goal line carries is kind of the moment I start losing interest because, for this Texans team, like you need every like high value touch if you're going to be a running back that matters in fantasy. If it's Nick Chubb and Britton Brown splitting the goal line stuff, that's very bad. Marks has been active in the passing game, but you need more than that. It doesn't seem like he's getting the goal line stuff, understandably so. Not much hope for him. Krosky-Merritt, I had a lot of hope for until the Jaden Daniels injury, and now I think he's just kind of screwed. He's very much like Ryan Robinson last year. Like the bet was you just need the Commanders to be in the red zone a lot, beating teams a lot, able to control the game on the ground. Like his numbers with Mariota are just dreadful this year. I had given like a bull's case for him a couple weeks ago, but none of it just matters without Jaden Daniels with the state of this offense. Was there a 4th one? Sorry, I talked too long and I forget.
I don't know. It was Kamara, but we had already kind of talked Kamara.
Yeah, not much hope for him, but like Kamara at least you can plug in as a top 30 running back every week.
just barely, but you can also plug in. How do you like that? Ryan J_Heath. Make sure he's part of the people you're following. Make sure you check. And like I said, if I'm doing it, I'm not trying to be like, haha, look at me. But I don't have a lot of time. We all don't have a lot of time in this industry to read other people's stuff. We do the best we can. But I make sure to double check my notes with Ryan's every Sunday nights over at Fantasy Points. Once again, the Everything Report. It's already out right at this time I usually check it. It's about Wednesday afternoonish is usually when you put it out. Am I correct on that one?
Tuesday afternoon.
Tuesday afternoon. Oh, it's already been. Oh, see.
Yeah, we
that's
try to get it out before waivers. Yep.
So, I don't even get around to it until then. So there you go. It's already out on Wednesdays, a full day before I get to it. So there you go. Ryan Heath, one of the good ones, and way too young. And thank you for making me feel old, dude.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Had an awesome time. Apologies for making you feel old, but yeah, would love to do this again, man.
And as always, before we get out of here, buys and sells, we talked DeAndre Swift. I would buy him. I would buy him if you're getting RB3 cost. I think he and Monangai can both be RB2s. I discussed that in waivers, discussed it, I think, in the comments too. I will buy Josh Jacobs. I know people are concerned about the injury and the workload being a little bit lower, but really nice playoff schedule for Josh Jacobs, assuming he stays healthy, but I think that's why you get the discount because people are worried about that. Chase Brown, smarter people won't sell him because of the injury to Samaje Perine. And maybe Perine's fine. They're on a bye, but that's also part of the reason that you might be able to get Chase Brown. Really nice playoff schedule. He should be top 15 with Perine. And then if Perine were to be out, and maybe, heck, multiple weeks, he's going to have so much bell cow work that he's going to be pushing the top 10 again, which is what we wanted for this season. I will go after Quinshon Judkins. Really nice playoff schedule, and there's nobody left on the Jets defense, so it might be your last chance to buy Judkins this week before he goes off against the Jets. Jordan Addison and Terry McLaurin have nice playoff schedules. Addison's risk, obviously, is J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. Not necessarily the passing volume, but I think they can get together and get the rapport going before we hit the playoffs. And McLaurin's obviously a huge risk. But if McLaurin is somehow healthy by the time we get to the playoffs, real nice playoff schedule, whether or not Jaden Daniels is back this season, McLaurin's not going to cost you anything. And that's really why. I know people are dropping Terry McLaurin. So I would go get McLaurin for nothing and just stash him. On the sells, J.K. Dobbins, it's not even the injury. I've mentioned many times the Broncos have one of the worst playoff schedules in all facets, passing and running. Another really bad schedule is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if Jaylen Warren is going to net you RB1 return, I see a lot of people talking about buying because right now, after the Chargers, you got Bengals, Bears, Bills, Bears, Ravens, Dolphins, but then that's the issue is like Lions, Browns doesn't get much worse for a running back matchup in weeks 16 and 17. So if you're thinking playoffs only, again, that's only because people are trying to buy Warren, deservedly so. And if you're going to get RB1 price, that's where you get away from him. Otherwise, just hold him. And then sell Chris Olave if you can. Maybe somebody's thinking, hey, Rashid Shaheed's gone. So Chris Olave, top 15 the rest of the season. He's going to get blanketed by everybody. And Shuck was showed more rapport with Shaheed, more downfield opportunities, might help Olave, but the schedule for the Saints to finish things out is rough, as is the Cardinals, speaking of the Marvin Harrison situation. So with all the excitement of Brissett, you can double down on an opportunity to sell Marvin Harrison for top 15 like people want him to be, and maybe he is this week, maybe he is a few games, but that playoff schedule, and Brissett, as mentioned with Ryan, is more of an upgrade for McBride than he is for Marvin Harrison. I think I got everything. I don't think I said too many more stupid things or tripped up too much, but I'll be back on Friday for the news and notes. Hopefully some of the medicine will have worn off by then, and we'll get good news on the MRI on Monday would be the really good thing. But I don't even know why I'm still talking. See? Rambling. I don't know. Whatever. Good luck in week 10.